Are you tired of being nice? Tired of playing it safe, staying quiet, doing what's expected? But what happens when you stop being the good guy? Does that make you the villain? Or is being bad just what happens when you've had enough? And if it leads to something right, does it matter if you had to do something wrong? That's why learning to control your darker traits can actually help you. To fully unleash your inner villain, you need to learn how to use some of your psychopathic traits. And I don't mean that in a bad way. Some dark traits might sound scary, but when you know how to control them and use just the right amount, they can actually help you. Especially in high-pressure situations, it's crazy to realize that top professionals and even well-known anime characters rely on these traits. Take a brain surgeon, for example. When something goes wrong mid-surgery, they can't afford to panic or get overwhelmed. They have to stay calm, clear, and focused. That cool, detached mindset, what some might call ruthless, is exactly what saves lives. The surgeon isn't heartless. They're just locked in. That kind of mental discipline is a version of what people call psychopathic traits. The same goes for high-performing CEOs. To run a business, sometimes you've got to make tough calls, like letting people go or cutting a project that just isn't working. If you let guilt get in the way, the whole business could suffer. So what seems cold from the outside is often strategic and necessary. Sometimes, making the hard call is actually the kindest thing in the long run. This kind of decision-making doesn't just show up in boardrooms or hospitals. It shows up in anime too. Think of Erwin Smith from Attack on Titan. He wasn't cruel, he wasn't heartless, but he understood how to use fear, belief, and sacrifice to lead others through impossible situations. He didn't fight for peace. He fought to uncover a deeper truth, driven by guilt, obsession, and the burden of leadership. Erwin used cold empathy to read people's emotions and moral flexibility to steer them toward a goal many would die for. And when the time came, he gave up everything, not for glory, but because someone had to. That's what it looks like to lead from the edge. Sharp mind, steady hands, and the courage to carry the cost. The same traits show up in special forces too. During missions, they don't have time to hesitate. They can't freeze or second-guess their feelings, because that kind of fearlessness and emotional control is what keeps them alive. So the point is, if you can learn these dark traits and use them wisely, they let you walk away from toxic people without guilt. They help you take bold risks that others are too scared to try. They give you clarity when everyone else is paralyzed by emotion. Another powerful trait is cold empathy. That means you can understand what someone's feeling or predict how they'll act without getting emotionally pulled in. You don't have to be heartless, but sometimes getting caught up in other people's emotions just makes things worse. Cold empathy gives you an edge. In conversations, in arguments, negotiations, it helps you stay calm, observant, strategic. Then there's moral fluidity. That doesn't mean you have no morals. It means your morals aren't so rigid they snap under pressure. If you had to bend the truth to protect someone, or take bold action that made people uncomfortable but led to a better outcome, you'd do it. That kind of moral flexibility shows up in fiction too, especially in characters who carry heavy burdens, like Itachi Uchiha from Naruto. He's seen as a villain, a monster, cold, ruthless, responsible for killing his entire clan. But behind that is something few ever saw. Love. Love for his brother. Love for peace. And a brutal willingness to sacrifice everything to prevent war. He used cold empathy to understand how others would think and act. He used moral fluidity to make the hardest possible choice, one that shattered his reputation, but protected the future. Bro didn't do it for power. He did it because no one else could. That's what it looks like when dark traits are used for something bigger than yourself. And just like before, professionals use these traits too. Special forces keep a clear head in high-stakes situations. If they got caught up in who's right or wrong, they'd hesitate, and that could cost lives. Cold empathy keeps them sharp. Spies, negotiators, they read emotions, mirror them, not because they care deeply, but because it helps them get results. And if you're worried these traits might make you look like a bad person, they don't. Actually, most people who use them well don't come off as villains. They wear what's called the mask of normalcy. They seem charming, polite, and friendly, but underneath, they're focused, calm, and willing to do what others won't. They know when to show emotion and when to switch it off. Think about it. Doctors, CEOs, elite soldiers, they seem warm and relatable, but in high-stress situations, they operate with laser focus. They shut off emotion, act without guilt, and bounce back faster than most. And nobody suspects a thing because they carry themselves with calm confidence. So when people talk about embracing your inner villain, it's not about being evil. It's about turning your darker traits into strengths. It's about building a calm, unshakable layer beneath your surface. You wear the mask not to fool people, but to function at your best. This idea is called adaptive psychopathy. It's about using just enough of these traits to perform at a high level without losing your humanity. Too much and it's dangerous, but the right amount at the right time gives you an edge. It helps you lead, decide, protect, and succeed. But what happens when you lose those same traits? Ambition, cold logic, moral flexibility stop serving you and start controlling you. Look at Light Yagami from Death Note. He started with a clear goal: eliminate evil and make the world better. And he had everything: intellect, discipline, courage, not to mention a notebook that could take people's lives. But instead of mastering his dark side, he got addicted to it. Light didn't integrate the villain within. He became it, embodied it. He wore the mask of normalcy. On the surface, he was a model student. Underneath, he was calculating, ruthless, and unshakably certain that he alone was right. That certainty is what made him dangerous. He lost empathy. He stopped questioning himself. Every challenge to his vision became a threat to be eliminated. And in trying to play God, he lost his humanity. This is what happens when you embrace your power without boundaries. Light shows us the risk. When you use these dark traits without self-awareness, without compassion, you don't become a high performer. You become a tyrant. So embrace your inner villain, but don't let it consume you. Take Lelouch from Code Geass, for example. Bro didn't start as a tyrant. He was just a kind older brother, a student who wanted a peaceful life for his sister. But when that world betrayed him, he chose something few are willing to face. He embraced the mask of a villain. He stopped playing the nice guy and took control, not recklessly, but with cold empathy, ruthless logic, and unshakable discipline. Lelouch used deception, manipulation, and moral fluidity not for selfish gain, but to destroy a corrupt empire. He didn't run from his darkness. He mastered it. He wore the mask of Zero, becoming a symbol of revolution. Outwardly charming and charismatic, inwardly calculating and driven. That's the essence of adaptive psychopathy done right. Most people couldn't understand him. They called him a monster. But in the end, he sacrificed himself to create peace. He died not as a hero, but as the villain everyone needed. Being a villain isn't about harm. It's about having the strength to be misunderstood, while building a world no one else dared to imagine. And a functional villain knows how to flip the switch, and when to turn it off. They're not emotionless, they just manage their emotions well. That's what growth looks like when you stop running from your darker side and start mastering it. You speak up, you protect your time and boundaries, you make tough calls when they need to be made. That's the power of embracing your inner villain. Not to harm, but to grow. Because you've spent enough of your life trying to be who people wanted. Now you're just being who you are.